the word innocent, which you said have used a number of times with respect to becoming aware of parts. And I don't know why it struck me as I'm not sure what he's trying to get at, because it's such a common word. And I just tried to sit with that for a bit. And I thought about, it occurred to me that innocence is sort of prototypically applied to the newborn and very young children. There are no, they're blameless. There are no motivations that could be criticized, that could be seen as selfish with a small s. And I have had some questions arise about the ability. Yes, I know what I just said. There are no bad parts, but I've had some tension or difficulty arise around feeling that innocence. So I know my friends are able to speak to this point, and I wondered what any or all of you have to say on this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, David. I'd like to just take a personal moment for a second. And just when I was giving you two a hard time, David and Jessica, you can hear that I'm just so glad to see you. It's such a treat for me that's what it is. It's just like I'm like, oh, I want to lock the room, and wow, we get this to be the four of us. It makes me so happy.
I felt that.
Yeah, nice. And let me do the housekeeping really quick. Just that I'm immediate. Oh, sorry. Yes, Jessica.
Yeah. Real quick. It feels good to hear that I was missed. And I was, as we were all speaking, wishing I had said that back to you instead of what I said, that I've missed you too, Sid. Okay,
Thank you. Housekeeping. Okay. I'm a mediator, not a psychotherapist. Friends and colleagues exploring. If everybody's good with that, being responsible for their journeys could get a thumbs up. And that as always, I'm recording my square, not your square, but the audio could be anything uncomfortable, push pause or delete at the end. Good with that. This might be shared, thumbs up. That nice. I think what the door you've opened, David, is a really wonderful one. And I guess I'd like to open that up for us in this way. I have a thought. Are there any photos of you that you look at from your childhood where you see, and just whatever your word is for this, like it's like David says, I often use the word innocence, but you just see beauty. You just see beauty, or you see the sense of perfection. There's nothing could be wrong here. As I look at young David, as I look at young Jessica, and if that's not there, it could be because some of us with the dramas that we had in our childhood, we can't see that. So it might be when we're in a room full of puppies, or when we're in nature, or when we're watching the sunset go down, or we're in a sports game and it's like our team is just grace and they're winning, and it's like, wow, that is just so beautiful. It's perfection. It's ballet. Or we are watching ballet or theater, or we see a piece of art that it's all is touched, or beauty is touched, or perfection. And I have a new favorite word, which is, and Tony and I were just talking about radiant presence. You just see the beingness, the radiant presence. And so I guess that's my question for each of us. Like, where do you find that? What's your touchstone for that? Is it an image of yourself, an image of your child, of a nephew or niece, of a puppy? Where do you find that? And what's your word? Like David's saying, like the innocence word, that might not really work. Like, what's your word for it? Is it, the new age people say it's just light. It's just radiance. What's your word for that? And David, will you start us? How do you find, what do you find?
Yeah, it's making me very emotional in a really wonderful way, sort of on the verge of tears. Um, how odd, right? But no, it's not. It's great. I have so yes, awe and just energized, radiant awe, just electric in the body. And I think particularly of I have had a long history of involvement with music, including some period of time when I created music. But listening or creating, I've had some experiences which I believe were fundamental in revealing to me a path, which, for lack of a better term, I'll call spiritual. And so there are experiences of listening to music or uh, that are in my mind historically, where I was transported um, simultaneously into the physical material. I was already in the physical material space, but then I was also simultaneously in something that was like much larger, in fact, unbounded.
And when there, in this revealing, in this transported to this space, this unboundedness, when you would, with what you were hearing or what you would see, was it like a transpersonal? Was there, whatever your word is, you use the word unbounded, was it in radiant awe? Radiant awe, is that how you would experience, you were experiencing, you could say, the world or objects?
Yes, without a distinction regarding that quality interiorly or exteriorly. So yes, the world, and yes, presence.
Perfect. Perfect. That. Great. We're going to start there. We're going to start there with each of us. It's like how our version of what David's describing. Anything else with that, David?
Gosh, it's really fun coming back to this recollection that was that was formative. Not that I've been as diligent and sincere ongoingly in all aspects and every minute of my life, but this is inspirational in a very fundamental way. And to return to that at any point, particularly with you, my friends, is very, very nice. I like it.
Thank you. And for us, could we, as we hear David's window to this, his experience, his recollection, radiant awe, which can we find there's some resonance there. And David describes the love of music and the creating and how that opened the space of this unboundedness through the listening, through sound, through music. It's kind of one of David's windows. How about Antonio? What did you find?
All right. Wow. You know, that invitation, when David brought up innocence, and you asked us to find our own expression of that, how would we refer to it, to that experience? And I was thinking, yes, if those pictures or that picture, I was thinking of one specific picture of myself as a child. And definitely innocence is the best, like I couldn't find a better word for what I see in that child. His innocent. And that took me to, that brought up so many experiences that I have with clients every time we encounter a part that's problematic to other parts of my client. And what I try to convey to them is I'm really, and what these parts inspire is that I can sense their innocence, and the word that always comes to me like immediately is sacred. I feel that innocence is sacred. And then when David was referring, he used the word electric. That pointed me to this sensation around my my nose and around my mouth, which feels precisely electric, like there's a subtle electricity around it that is always tied to the experience of witnessing that innocence. It's as if my body was responding like that to to being in presence of that innocence, just witnessing it. And I had never paid attention to that. I only noticed when David mentioned the electricity. So yeah, that was my trip.
And that was your trip. And I think of like, yeah, you guys, when you're with a client and they touch that, or you see that in them, you see the innocence. Something somatically responds. I'm hearing the sense of this electricity. Maybe it's an aliveness, this sensation in the face. And also you use the word, when you say this, you have another word, you use the word sacred. And the innocence is a sacred. What's that word to us? Sacred for all of us, sacred. What does it point to? And can we relate to, as Antonio describes, the electricity, this aliveness in the face that responds to the seeing of this sacredness, this presence? What's your version of that? How does your body somatically respond when there's an experience of this, whatever we're pointing to right now? Anything else, Antonio? Guess whose turn it is?
Oh, I feel like my system's kind of going in other directions, so I apologize in
Oh,
advance.
tell us where yours is going. You look at us. We are all so curious. We're not. I don't think there's even a moment of thought like, no, Jessica should play this game. It's like, what's going on in Jessica?
So when David asked about innocence, what came up for me was this concept from Resla about clean pain and dirty pain. And clean pain is when we process it within ourselves. And dirty pain is when we don't have the capacity to do that and we push the pain onto someone else. And when I struggle to see the innocence is when it's dirty pain and someone's trying to push their pain onto me.
Wait, we say that again. When you see innocence,
when I struggle to see the innocence.
When you struggle to see it.
Is when it's dirty pain and someone, whether one of my parts to another part, or another person to me, or me to another person, when it's dirty pain and I don't have the capacity, or for whatever reason I'm not processing it myself, or they're not processing it themselves, I struggle to see that it's pain, and that they're not trying to push that pain. I mean, they are, but they're not trying to cause harm. They're trying to handle pain.
Yeah.
And where, in seeing this discernment in your system, where clean pain makes it more accessible for you to see the innocence, or whatever your word is for, if it's sacred, if it's beauty, if it's radiant awe of that. And if it's the sense of dirty pain, where it's somehow projected, or the contraction is kind of pushed out, it becomes much more difficult to see this. Anything else you'd like to share with that, and that the absolute clarity of discernment? That's so, I appreciate how clearly you shared it with us. It's a new concept for me, the clear pain and the dirty pain.
I love it. So I just keep coming back to it for many reasons. No, I don't know what else to share.
And for all of us, how do we translate that clear pain and dirty pain? And we don't have to go outside of here. We can just stay inside with our parts. The parts where we can just, when the system, maybe the protectors allow us to see the clear pain, just to see the suffering that's there, the pain that's there. And then for other parts of us, it's like, no fucking way. And it's like the protector comes in, right? Anything arise for Antonio and David with what Jessica just shared? It's so interesting.
Gratitude for that perspective. There's the this is so many, like so many other things. It's like this model, the great utility of that model, clear pain, dirty pain, clean pain, dirty pain, is that having just, I'm not engaged with an experience of utilizing it, but the seeing it conceptually actually opens the possibility of seeing innocence in this projection, outwardly or inwardly, of the dirty pain, because you're there's some distance, there's some discernment, there's some seeing it rather than being blended with it. So it goes all back into all the themes that we continue to work with. So that's really, I really like it. I like it a lot. I'll see if I can, to the extent which it comes up and I could apply it when something that's dirty arises in me, or my perception of where somebody else is coming from, particularly the latter. That's another question. But the tool is very, utility is very strong, I would think.
So right now, sorry, I was wondering, Jessica, if you could, because I was certain that I understood the difference, but now after David shared that thought, I got confused again. Could you please remind me what the difference is?
So clean pain is when I process it within myself, that I feel it, that I acknowledge it, that I care for myself, whatever it is I need to do to process the pain. dirty pain is when I can't do that or choose not to do that, and I push it onto someone else.
So would it, I mean, could we say that, because when I hear you, what, you know, like, I think for me, dirty pain is when I'm too blended with a part, and I can help that part just, you know, operating through me completely, just taking over, and it's so difficult, you know, especially for some of my parts to be compassionate towards, you know, that weakness. So yeah, yeah. I understand that 100%.
I think
Nice.
part of it for me, I actually have someone in my life who finds pleasure in hurting others. Well, not actually in my life because I've got no contact, but and to see, I could see that as being harmful on purpose, or I can see that as unbearable pain, finding an outlet somewhere besides within themselves.
Which actually reminds me of a question that popped up in my mind when you shared previously, and you made that distinction between, you know, being in huge pain versus you know, or meaning no harm. And you know, I had this question, like, so what if the people that we see as meaning harm really ultimately mean no harm, even when they mean harm?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and there are parts in my system to which that is completely unacceptable, right? Because it's so tricky.
It's a beautiful possibility, isn't it? And I'm going to, that when we start to open more to use Jessica's word, like the capacity to be able to see, to open to that, even when someone's saying things that sound really horrible to us, like, God, they just want to hurt. They must enjoy being mean or hurting me. But then we all know if we can, our system often doesn't allow us to, right? Because our protectors come up, and then it just opens when it does.
I think that's
And
part
that's
of what helps me too is to say it's okay to protect myself. That's dirty pain. It's not mine.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Mm. And then there's something, but as we hear Jessica speak about this, right? And like when we hear like, gosh, these people just enjoy hurting me, we also can hear in her that there is something that has this understanding, that has the compassion for, wow, this person must be in a lot of pain. Mm. I have something, because sometimes there's a little privilege in being the facilitator that you can kind of be like, not vulnerable, and it's just like you can kind of be, oh, I'm just asking questions. And with what David brought up with the innocence, and as we're talking about our windows and all of this, for two reasons. One, because it's like one of my favorites, something that's so dear to me, what he brought up. And two, I feel like I'm wanting to have skin in the game too with this. That as we all have our words, like David's radiant awe, like for some reason the innocence came to me because that's where that was my version of the glimpse of the seeing. And this was just in my mid-20s when I was teaching. I taught conflict resolution workshops throughout school systems. It would go from kindergarten to college level. When I would be in a kindergarten, and then I would be outside with them, and I would see them on the playground, I was so struck by that was all I could see was innocence. Even the bully, even the child that wanted to go home, that hated being there, even the one that was lonely off by itself, there was no problem. It was just this innocence. And if anything, that has probably been what inspired this journey, because then I would go work with third graders, or I'd go in high school or go into college. I couldn't see it. It's like, but wait a minute, I don't get it. What's the difference? We're all the same. And it's like, but they'd get a couple years, and I couldn't see it anymore. And it was like, okay, well, this is clearly the game. And it continues to be, it continues to be the game in a way, to just, as I see Sid, the 57-year-old, and his 57-year-old friends out in the playground of life in the world, am I able to see what I saw in the kindergarten playground, what I still see in the kindergarten playground? Can I see that? And the word innocence has been, it's been a bridge. It's been a bridge for that. And then what are we seeing? And that's where it can be, what are we seeing? What did I see on that what do I see on that kindergarten playground? And that's where this is my version of the radiant awe. And it could be, I replace that word with beauty, replace it with perfection. I replace it with love. It's all love. All I see is love. All I see is this radiant presence. And I think there are a lot of words that could replace that. And then when it becomes really, I won't use that F word again, but really hard in this game, is there's the playground out there. And then when it becomes really interesting is when it's just hanging out in the mirror. And am I seeing in the mirror that which I see on the kindergarten playground? And then it becomes so interesting to see what blocks it. What are my protector parts that aren't allowing me to see this? Because I'm wanting to suggest that we're pointing to, this electricity in the face, the sacredness for me, in this little model, this little map that I'm playing with, of the background and foreground. The background is the self and beingness, is really a glimpse of the nature of our, I don't know what to call it, true nature, whatever, that our beingness, whatever it is, that it's just this glimpse of that. That's the Sid square, Sid version.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good.
Where do we have this privilege of the four of us exploring together and you're co-creating. Where do we want to go?
In this last in what was just chapter 1, having been brought to some end by your question, another idea emerged, probably in relationship to my interests in Buddhism, which elevates the notion of equanimity to a very prominent place. And in what we have been talking about, each of us, the blossoming of equanimity came forward, and I had the feeling of, contrary to some teachings which advocate trying to cultivate equanimity. Not that there's anything wrong with cultivation, but that rather this equanimity just arises and blossoms on its own through this seeing what is, very, very purely. In this instance, the seeing of what is incorporates Jessica's notion about what we've all been talking about in one way or another. So equanimity is could be seen in this respect as another aspect of true nature or pure being. That's always there and always present, but we may or may not see it or be connected to it. And so the learning is to recognize or acknowledge it and not to make it or create it. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
It evokes a question here for me, where you ended, David, with so the aspiration, or what we're doing is it's the recognizing it. We're acknowledging the beingness, perhaps as a flavor of the equanimity. And how about that word? How about this, the equanimity word? The Buddhists so often use that David's sharing. How about this question just for us? What's most like equanimity that's here now? And how do you know that it's here? You know that it's here. There's sensations that are associated with like this electricalness in Antonio's face. Is it about a sense of boundlessness, another word of David's? Is it more Jessica's, like the clean pain, and seeing the clean pain that opens equanimity? The sense of spaciousness. How do we know equanimity, or whatever our flavor of that is here? What do you find? I don't know if that inquiry is interesting, but what anything for you, David?
Yeah. So, I mean, the word that came up was love. The connectedness, or maybe even beyond that, the non-separateness. To coin a word. And yes, there was a blossoming again of this physical, energetic explosion that I smile because it's quite pleasant.
Physical, energetic explosion. Is it? What is it? How do you know that's here? What's it like?
The body, it's somatic, and yet it's the body. Okay, look at myself. If I look at each of you, I can draw an outline that defines where your body is. But from in here, this experience of the body is not nearly so linearly cut out. It's just boom, just like the body is there, but it's not a boundary. How can I say that? The boundaries, if I go looking for where does this hand and where does it end and where does it begin, I can see some kind of form, but from the inside, it's just this kind of fuzzy energy thing. I don't know. Very hard to speak about, but quite clear in its presence. And so when when the love and gratitude and equanimity just finds itself coming out, then that wakes up this body energy that is well, that's why I use the word unbounded.
Mm.
Hmm. Physical, energetic explosion. Hmm. Thank you, David. Energetic explosion. What's our version of that as we hear David describe how this lives in him, this equanimity, this love, this gratitude, and what occurs, how he knows it's here, the connectedness, the non-separateness, the blossoming, something wakes up of this physical, energetic explosion. Antonio, how does this, what did you find with equanimity as we dove into that word?
I was actually just rejoicing in the, you know, in the lush richness of, you know, how, you know, a concept like that triggers such different experiences. And because for me, you know, the way my experience was relating to equanimity was, it was just this, I could sense this emptiness that was, you know, that was waiting to receive whatever arose. But then when I was listening to David, you know, that sent me on a completely different path because yeah, because I took it as an invitation and I followed it, and I just went blank on the word he used right now. Could you remind me, David? You mentioned,
Equanimity.
yeah, no, but you were talking about this. Oh yeah, the expansion, right? And the
Yeah.
bound. And so that I was exploring my own experience of that, and I was relating to you know, that feeling of where does my body really end? Like, does it end? Because yeah, I can feel like the difference of temperature around my skin. It's a bit cooler than, you know, deeper within my body. Like, but I have the impression that I can also sort of sense like past it, you know, and into the room and into the air. So I get that sense of boundlessness. And so where does my experience really end? Does it end? Am I just used to, you know, am I just conditioned to think of myself as the, because, you know, it depends on who you know, where you, I was just really, exploring. Yeah, it was fun.
Sorry, Antonio. This is not. This is spiritual. This is work. We have this is for spiritual achievers. Fun,
Yeah.
kind of a joke.
They're always lost on me. I'm sorry. I miss them every time that happens.
No, but it's. I mean, I was loving how you described it. It's just first it's just emptiness, waiting to receive whatever arose. And then with David, as where David took us, David, there was like you saw, it's an invitation and something followed. And then there was whatever was discovered with that. And I do love that word fun. It seems to take us back to, you know, David was saying something about it's like to cultivate equanimity. It's like a spiritual practice, kind of, okay, we're doing a practice versus like it just arises, it blossoms. And perhaps in the fun, it blossoms. Anything else with that, Antonio? And how about then back to our author David? Anything, any kind of clarities, discernments to throw out?
You know, that's why I come to this, and I think a lot of the rest of you come to these groups, because here Antonio took us in a different direction, and I completely resonated with what he said. Although it was in a way a polar opposite, because I got this thing too about emptiness, or you know, as I look at all of these squares, even including my own square, I look at that, and that's, you know, there's somebody in there. It's even got my name at the bottom of it. Okay. And so that's a thing. That's a real thing. But from the point of view of what's looking at it, it's empty. It's waiting, you know, waiting. It's not actually, it's not waiting. It's receiving the world into its infinite capacity. That's kind of the where what you were talking about, Tony. That's kind of where that took me. It's like, yeah, I groove on that too. You are so right, sir.
So how about all of that in the fun of it? All of it in the fun of it. The kind of the absolute emptiness. Or for some of us, equanimity might be that emptiness. It's just the waiting to receive what arose, or receiving the world into its infinite capacity. And then there's love, and there's gratitude, then there's fun, then there's play, then there's connection. Because it's sometimes it's an either or. Sometimes you play with either ors there to get the discernment clearer. No, like I'm just interested in the very essence of this beingness. What's the essence of it? Well, maybe the Buddhists are pointing us to the essence and the equanimity and the emptiness. Well, are you guys, Tony and David, are you also curious with me? Because as we shift over to our friend Jessica, if she's going to be like, yeah, but let me tell you what's really going on here.
I hope she does.
Yeah. Hey, everybody else has. So why, you know, knock yourself out, Jessica. Take it.
Bring it on.
I do. I have like a thought and then like a inquiry almost. So I was feeling like, for me, equanimity is capacity, which I come back to a lot. And self has infinite capacity. Heart, not so much. And so the equanimity is how connected am I to that capacity to be with whatever is. Or even sometimes, how connected am I to, if I can't feel it in this moment, knowing that capacity exists, and like having faith that I can get back there. And so this is sort of where my thoughts went next was, I've had this sense of stillness inside for like the past week that is almost a sense of like someone who, like, if my body were wounded and I kept trying to find a comfortable place and every way I turned hurt, and I finally found a spot that didn't. It's like that, but me, not my body. And so this stillness of like, I finally found a place it doesn't hurt, and not wanting to move from there, but also knowing that all of my movement that I know is about avoiding pain, and that also movement could reopen a wound and actually cause pain if I move the wrong way. But also an awareness that movement can be things moving through, and movement can be the joy of life bubbling up. And those are movements that I don't know. And so this is my inquiry, is how movement and equanimity interact. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel very fuzzy about my question.
Yeah, wow. Feel like there could be an IFS conference or IFS non-dual community conference. And for the whole theme of the conference, we could just take what Jessica said in the last minute as our theme. This is really beautiful, Jessica. Really, really beautiful what you just said. Gosh. I didn't get all of it, but I just sense of equanimity as capacity. Knowing self, this word self that we use as a label of this in IFS, has this infinite capacity. And this curiosity, this inquiry and moment. How connected am I to this capacity, to the self, to be with whatever is? And do we know it that way? Do we know self as this capacity to be with what is, whatever is? I mean, limitations to what self can be with. A limitation. And then Jessica goes to, but then often we're not we're not just abiding as the self. We're not just abiding as this capacity to be with whatever is, right? What a lovely place when we are there, but reality. And then Jessica takes it to this other place, that the times when we're not abiding there, where we can't feel this. And then it's, how connected am I to knowing that this capacity, that the self, this capacity to be with whatever is exists in the midst of blendedness, in the midst of just regular life, knowing that it exists. And then the preciousness of where you went next, talking about this last week, there's been this sense of there's been the stillness here. And the stillness is like a place that doesn't hurt. I love the words like sanctuary, refuge, home. It's like this place that doesn't hurt, a place where there's just okayness here. And this word stillness, wherever that is, stillness. And then she points to that there are aspects of her, there are parts of her like, okay, don't move, stay there, that's it. Like this is the 0 point, this is it. No pain here. I like this. And then she also speaks of parts that have this, that, oh, we got to be careful because we could just move a little bit and it could open the wound. It could bring us back into pain. Be so careful. And then there's these parts that are like, God, we got to be careful about movement because the stillness is, there's no pain here, and the movement can bring us back into pain. And then this curiosity about where she ends with us. But there's some kind of insight. There's something here that Jessica's pointing to, that could this movement itself be of this joy. It's used the word joy of life instead of stillness here. It was the joy of life. Could the movement be the joy of life? And then it's just this question of the relation between the movement, which can really take us into pain, and this equanimity, or perhaps the stillness where there is no pain. And then this word joy of life. What do we do? What do we do with all of that? First off, Jessica, how'd that do? Corrections, add additions?
There was one thing I wanted to clarify because it feels really important in my system, that my movement so far has been an avoidance of pain. That the movement I know is avoidance of pain movement, not joy movement. So in addition to the part saying if I move, I might hurt or I might move towards pain, it's like I don't know movement that is not avoidance movement.
Yes, yes. You look at Antonio's nodding, like we all know this, right? Movement, that's an avoidance of pain. What does this bring up in you guys, Antonio and David, this incredible thesis that Jessica's just thrown out for us?
I can very much relate to what she's sharing. I know parts like that, and and I've recently, I feel like our intimacy has grown a little lately, and there my parts that are like that, they've been telling me more than telling me, they've allowed me to sense into their experience. To when I say we've grown a bit more intimate, is because they've allowed me to see a little bit more into their experience, and it looks a lot like like they feel so familiar, like I just sensing how I don't know if I'm making any sense, but just by recognizing it's almost as if I could see the resemblance between times in my life when those parts, they're still like, it's as if they captured an experience that was very, intense and painful at a time of my life. And that somehow, it made them be so hyper-vigilant. They were so focused in trying to anticipate unsafety, what they perceived as a constant threat. That obviously what they have brought to me is this understanding, like, okay, that makes sense. It makes so much sense that you guys are, bracing yourself all the time and going through such a hard time constantly. Even when earlier I was noticing this fun and this, this lighter, like a lot nicer, like more comfortable parts. These other parts, they never leave me. Like I can still sense that pain and that tension. They're there too. But it's precisely because they've allowed me to see into their experience, and they've given me the opportunity to recognize them as, smaller versions of Antonio, like when I was like really young. And that was my life for a bit. That's how I experienced life for a bit. And those parts are still very much there. And so they have a really hard time allowing me to notice fun and lightness. And because they're scared that, that they cannot relax. It's so hard for them to open up to the sweetness of life, because they were not experiencing that at the time. And so what you're saying to me is like, hell yeah. Yeah.
And Antonio, what changes when you described that they allowed me to sense more into their experience. We've grown more intimate, we've grown more familiar. What happens with that?
Before that happens or after,
No,
or what?
after that, like it's what I'm hearing is that's what's been occurring, or it has occurred, that there's more intimacy with these parts that are hyper vigilant, that are doing their very best to keep you safe, right? Because they're trying to anticipate unsafety. As you become more intimate with these parts that are still here, like you're not even here, maybe you're more aware of them, maybe they're more present, these parts, these aspects of you, these little Antonios. What's that like as you become more intimate with them?
So they feel some relief, for sure. And also other parts that are very critical of them are also relief. They feel less threatened because they see them less as, antagonistic. Like they see more of their innocence through me, if that makes sense. They sense that my heart is genuinely appreciative of them and really, compassionate with their experience. And they know I'm not just, it's not just spiritual achiever trying to bring peace to the system, like to impose peace. They really sense it's coming from my heart, and that is unmistakable. Like they can help but notice it. And even the parts that are more cynical and that call BS on everything, they know there's no BS in that.
So how about the beauty in what he's described? It's almost like he's painting it for us. It's the beauty of what he's describing. This parts, how they.
This is so
This,
much. This is so much a result of this space, really. Like this has been going on lately because of this thing that is this welcoming that it's just contagious. So there's a lot of gratitude to you, Sid, for
yeah. Yes, and the treat, the four of us being here, the three of us being here with you,
absolutely.
the welcoming and love that's here towards your parts from the space, from David, Jessica, and Sid, and Antonio. The truth, the compassion, the understanding, the curiosity. What's that like? hyper-vigilant. What's it like that for the parts that are vigilant, that are, that are doing their very best, that are heroic in the system to keep things safe? We're going to keep it safe. What's it like to play that role? And just the curiosity and the welcoming of them. And then noticing, as you describe, the parts feel, wow, there's an authenticity here that's coming from Antonio's system and from his friends.
And I also would like to tell those parts in all our systems, if they're here, that I really understand their fear of our, or their, what they feel is their lack of capacity, and that, being witness to that pain and to that fear can feel like it really pushes us to the limit, to our perceived capacity, or this part's actual capacity. I don't want to deny anything there, but I also would like them. I would like to bring to this, to the table, my trust, and I know that it's, it pertains to all of us, that in our systems there is that capacity, even if these parts do not feel it at times, and that fear of movement is super relatable. And at the same time, I think that in all of our systems there's an understanding that wish for us to stop, to not move, it's only a fantasy, because it's not us doing the moving. Life moves and our systems move, and inevitably we will move. And our systems have the capacity to move through that.
Discernment that you're speaking of, that Jessica was highlighting, this knowingness, the equanimity, the stillness, the self, that is just very intrinsic nature of it, is this capacity that you're pointing to. Like, we have this capacity, we do, our systems have it, we all have it. And then the sweetness of this intimate understanding of our hearts that find safety through protecting. And they continue to do that. And the understanding of that, really the compassion and understanding for that, and the welcoming them just as they are. Anything else there, Antonio?
I'm really happy that you decided to have us for, and it's such a privilege. And I'm really happy too that David and Jessica are back. It's a beautiful meeting.
Just check back with Jessica first, because it just felt like you opened this beautiful door and set the framework, and Antonio just fleshed it out through his experience. How was that for you, Jessica?
I have no words right now.
Perfect.
So grateful. So grateful. Thanks, Antonio.
And we get to see David, who's been sitting quietly for the last 20 minutes. Let's move in there, David.
Well, this path that this group of explorers has been treading here. So there was profound admiration for both, well, for all of you, what you've been bringing. But there was a challenge to me and to you, Antonio, particularly, that this knowledge, certainty with respect to the capacity of the more difficult parts. It's like, where does that come from? Because do you just have that on faith? How did it arrive? Because I don't see the infinite capacity in my most challenging parts, at least while I'm living them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you're telling me that you know. Is that because of faith? I mean, how did you discover this capacity? Because, you know, so like I'm envying my admiration, my profound admiration spills over into envy. And this is my edge. This is where I get right to the place where I say, yeah, that's why I come to these groups, because my friends here have developed insights that I wish to explore myself, because it's does that make sense? Does you see where I'm coming from on that? Because I mean, I could say, yeah, I could take it on faith, but lived experience is not seeing the capacity at times. I say, oh, that's just life. That's what's going on right now. Okay, great, I got that. How do you open with complete surrender to these challenging parts that seem like they're not infinitely capacious? So that's me. Maybe the spiritual achiever, or whatever kind of searcher, doer, struggler, wanting, desiring, grabbing, pulling. I kind of know on one level that because of my experience, that doing self, small s, is not because it's good at setting an intention, but it's not good at getting the job done. If you know what I'm saying. It's more about release, letting go, seeing, accepting. So I'm just filling out. It's kind of like, yeah, I've said enough in that respect. So I'm posing it as a question in a way. I'll try to crystallize the question. It's like, how does one develop the capacity to see the infinite goodness and innocence and capacity of these parts when they take hold of me and challenge me to know being, while in the presence of these limited, fearful, or hateful, dirty parts?
Me, it's losing it and finding it and losing it and finding it and losing it and finding it. And then finally saying, okay, I've lost it, but I know it comes back.
Just before we go further, go on, Jessica. That I had a.
Oh, I was gonna say, my parts start feeling in that moment, and I think coming to a place of believing that it can come back is enough. That's not. Yeah, I don't know how to. I feel like I want to say that better, but I don't know how to.
And the belief arises from having observed a time-bound history wherein it back.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that you can believe in it.
Yeah, because I've lost it so many times. Because I've thought, okay, I know how I know now how to handle things and be in self and do that. And then all of a sudden I don't. I'm like, how do I not know this? I know this. How do I not know this? And then I, work through whatever that is and then find self and it comes back and the capacity is there. And I go, okay, I know how to do this. Boom. I don't know how anymore. What happened? How do I not know how to do this? I know how to do this. What is going on? Okay, be with it. Build it back like over and over and over until now I just know, okay, I've lost it, but it's still there. It's always been still there. Yeah.
We could pause for just a minute with this. Just the yumminess of David's inquiry, of his part. That's like that Antonio's pointing to, that Jessica's pointing to. I want more of that. I want to know it deeper. I want it more realized in my system. Just so that it gets to be all of our questions. Like to find that part, it's very clear in my system, this part that David's speaking, and just so that we're all with him in this, with this part. It's like we're almost answering our own, so we're answering our own questions. We're being with our own part in that, as well as David's, who's kind of leading us in this.
And I do still fall beyond that sometimes. Where I'm like, I don't know. Completely out of touch. I don't know if it's there.
Tony, anything bubbling? Sorry.
Yeah, I love how this can put it, like I've lost it enough times to know that. Because it feels like that. And listening to her, I've had that same experience. Like I've lost it again. Like feeling like, oh, I know how to do this now, and then you stop knowing how. and but then as I was listening to her relate my own experience, it was sort of as having the opportunity to listen back to myself. It was like, oh, so maybe I don't know how to do this, but it knows how to do it, and I know that it knows how to do it, and so I just maybe I don't know how to do it now, but I know it comes back, and I think that for me, and this very much ties into the conversation we previously had about innocence. I think that we could label this faith, and also, this this trust or belief in innocence is also related to this process of losing faith and losing self-energy and encountering some parts in my system that I didn't know I could come back from.
Thank you, my friend.
When early, like that, I was on the fence about sharing this earlier when we were talking about innocence and clean and dirty, and I've had I know I have parts that have been very hurtful, and that still can be very hurtful and hateful, and they hold a lot of rage, and to other parts of my system that was unbearable. Like I couldn't sleep. Like they were having all these nightmares. Like, this makes me utterly unacceptable. This I just it's unjustifiable that I exist as a human being. I'm unforgivable. And just for the record, because it's not like I haven't, I haven't hurt, like physically hurt anyone, or it's not heavy stuff. They were feeling a bit scared, that you may think that of them, but to some other parts in my system, that was. So yeah, so to come back to this conversation, I think that those have been like the biggest tests to faith. And
Yes. Just that we don't leave Antonio out here on his own with these parts that feel unforgivable, these what Dick Schwartz will call the extreme roles that our parts play. Just if we could all be like, yep, I got those. You should have heard the conversation I had with my mother yesterday. I'm visiting her. Should have heard, like, where did that come from? Oh my God, am I 13 years old? It's just,
you guys do?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
just that it's just, yeah. And then this is the mean question. Can that be okay? Hard question. When we get, Jessica's like, no, you can't talk to your mom that way, Sid.
Not yours, mine. I'm not even gonna see your part.
But from the self that has this capacity, that has this infinite capacity to welcome everything, can we find that these unacceptable parts that Antonio's pointing to, that we have, they're just critics, right? That say that's unacceptable, that's unforgivable. It's just a critic that's saying that about our system. And we all got, I mean, that could be a fun drinking game. Like, okay, who's got the most unforgivable part? And, but it's like, and from self, right? All of it's welcomed. All of it's welcome. All of those are welcomed. And even the forgetting, even this, because that might be the most unforgivable film of this. I totally forget, and I get blended. Like, can that be okay? Can we find from self where that's okay? Hmm. Anything bubbling?
Somebody, I think Jessica, but it just resonated so deeply. I'm unable to give proper credit to whoever surfaced it, but there was a perspective that was offered as to, I'm expressing my own thoughts here in my own ways. So I'm not quoting anybody, but it's like the feelings of like, I'm not doing this. The higher self is not synonymous with David's personality. There's some higher. I mean, I find myself getting into sort of religious or theological kind of conceptual frameworks to express this, which some people are bothered by, and I once was too, but I am not any longer. That it's about, just get out of your own way, and when you can't, you can't. But God is there trying to help you. God is pulling. What was it? The a quote from the famous Sufi adept Hafiz. Ever since God heard your name, he's been running through the streets calling for you. It's like the force of goodness is it wants to, and it I'm depersonalizing it. It is it by saying it as opposed to me, the smaller me. It's loving and forgiving, and but of course at times it's challenging to know that. But anyway, so I just thought I'd offer that up.
Just what you're pointing to, David, bringing this the sacred, the divine into form, that it gets to be. And that's in a way that's perhaps where you started us today, with this radiant awe, this beingness, this love, this gratitude, this electricity. And then what we're watching, perhaps we're watching the two get closer together. And as Antonio was sharing his system for us, this self that Jessica speaks of, that has this infinite capacity. It just is love. It just is welcoming. It just is that. And then the parts with their contractions, with their good intents, doing the very best for the system, and their protectiveness and their contractions. And then the sense of, as Antonia describes his parts, there becomes a greater intimacy with them. There's a sense of they're being seen, and something relaxes. And Rupert Spira says that, like, the parts become more transparent. They become more open and transparent to this beingness, as to come closer. And Jessica, even, she points to this word, the joy of life. Like, could the parts, the movement, actually be, instead of like a movement away from the pain, like, is it possible that they could be an expression of the joy of life? And I think we heard Antonio like really play with that with us for us today. How are we doing? We got like 8 minutes left.
My parts really want someone to tell me how to do joy.
What was that? Sorry, Jessica?
I said my parts really want someone to tell me how to do joy. I know that's not how it works.
I hear you.
But what was being revealed in Antonio's parts with this intimacy, right? Something was relaxing. And we know where joy is, right? This background, this beingness. I mean, to me, that's just another word for this radiant awe, this absence of lack, this causeless okayness, this fulfillment. Some people, that's why the spiritual people call it Satchitananda, this ananda, this fulfillment, this bliss, this joy. That they say that it's our very nature, that it is the background, and in our parts, it's just waiting to be revealed, right? But we're not doing the spiritual achiever. Okay, I gotta heal that part, gotta change it, gotta find. I love where Antonio is. Like, it was like you could watch, you could feel his parts opening.
To go to just when I hear Jessica, that part with Jessica's wanting to be shown how to do joy, you know, I get so curious about these parts in her, that what I sense, you know, I don't want to put words into, you know, but I get this image, this impression that there are some parts that are almost afraid of it, almost like that they're so occupied with, you know, their experience and their pain.
Let me just pause just to see if we can all find that, because we don't want it to be like Jessica's parts to feel like they're being like, well, they're special. They might be scared of joy. Like, can we all find that? Like, they have joy. Can you find the sense of surrender that comes with that? The letting go of protection, of vigilance that comes with that. And we can all find our parts, right? They're like, no way. It's not safe. I'm not going there. It's just that just what Jessica's pointing to with these parts is just like that we all can find it so well. But back to you, Antonio. I just wanted it to stay collective
Yeah,
for
no,
all of us.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I actually, yeah, I mean, it made me, I'm glad to hear that that is a shared experience, because I was obviously just speaking about my parts, and they were, you know, I was resonating with what I heard you say, Jessica. So I don't know if maybe other parts in your system can, well, yeah, I don't know how, if you can relate to that, or if that makes sense to you, and if that helps you be with those parts.
There's, I don't know if I'm going to be able to put this into words, but I've had this longing for a long time, for years now, to learn how to put down my armor. And there's something, I feel like this whole conversation, when it's okay for the innocence of the parts to be, and they are known and loved, and there's no need for armor. That it's almost like that is the joy of life bubbling. And I feel like I said that really not well, but that's the best I can do at the moment.
With the and we know this, right? When the parts are known and loved, just the way they are, we all taste that some, and we all have our spiritual achievers. That's right. Yeah, but we could do that a much more. But I love how the simplicity of how you just said that, Jessica. It's just like knowing and loving the parts as they knowing and loving the parts. And you said that kind of perhaps opens into this joy of life.
Because they get to just be.
When Jessica said that, just that they get to just be, like, can we feel the longing in our systems? Just wow, we could just be. We get to just be. Our parts are that's longing for what Jessica's pointing to. And isn't it the sweetest longing? Isn't it the sweetest longing? Oh my God, we got a minute left. Okay, David, Antonio, say something.
What a great age we live in. Taking a step back, that a lot of these are very ancient questions and issues and conflicts and understandings that people have been working on in various contexts as long as there have been human beings. You go back and look at those cave paintings, which I regarded as primitive until I was actually in one and looked at it. It's high art. People have been working with this stuff for a long time. But we are living in a time where we can do this thing on Zoom, for God's sake. We don't have to go off into the Himalayas and hang out in a cave for 25 years, or find a teacher in Nepal or something. You know what I mean? We're doing this stuff. We're doing this very, very human thing. And it's free, accessible through the good graces of our each other and our colleagues, and the expertise that Sid brings. I want to acknowledge that. So what you hear is gratitude pouring forth here. Gratitude.
Nice. Yes. And how can we throw in Antonio's word? Can we throw into all of that you just said? Fun.
Luckily,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And can we make a drinking game of this? Can we do this again next week?
Oh my God. Mm.
This is what going to church is supposed to be like.
I learned so much from today. I learned so much where you guys took us. Because I was just doing my best to follow along. Wow. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
You're here.
I think there we go. Until next time.
Yeah, yeah.
Fun.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Have fun.